My husband abandoned me during my cancer treatment. 4 years later, he wanted me back, not knowing I was cancer-free, and living with the ex he was always jealous of. 5 years ago, I got married to my ex-husband, Jerry. About a year later, he left me during one of the worst phases of my life. Back then, we were both 25. We had been dating for about 3 years after college, and then we got married because it seemed like the most obvious next step since we were both happy with each other. We had been married for about 4 months when, all of a sudden, I was diagnosed with stage 2 cervical cancer. There had been signs for a couple of months, but we had just chalked it up to general exhaustion and minor illnesses. When things started getting worse, we had to take my condition seriously, and that's when I was diagnosed. After that, I was in and out of the hospital on a regular basis. For the first couple of months, Jerry was extremely helpful. He would take great care of me, handle all the medical reports, and keep in touch with the doctors. I felt like I didn't have to worry about anything at all. Even when I started chemotherapy and began losing my hair, he shaved his head in solidarity with me. In short, he was literally perfect. But then he started losing faith. When I didn't get better after almost 6 months of treatment and several rounds of chemotherapy, I wasn't showing any signs of progress. Slowly but steadily, I was getting worse. He started distancing himself from me. Even when I tried to get him to talk to me, he would just shut me out. I was already going through a lot, and his behavior made me feel rejected. I couldn't take that, so I started picking fights with him just to get his attention. That seemed to work for a while, but then he moved even further away from me emotionally. Finally, about 2 weeks before our 1-year wedding anniversary, I woke up one day to find him gone. All he left for me was a note on our bedside table, telling me not to look for him because he did not want to be found. At first, I thought he was playing a prank on me, so I tried calling him and sent several messages, but none of them went through. After a few minutes, I realized he had blocked me, not just my phone number, but also on social media. I panicked and called his parents. They claimed they knew nothing and promised to get back to me, but they never did. I told my parents, and they moved in with me to take care of me in his absence, which we assumed would be temporary. Unfortunately, he never came back. I tried my best to find him, but was never able to. He was just gone for good. It took me a very long time to recover emotionally. I was incredibly depressed for months. I tried reaching out to his parents several times, but after the first call, they ignored me. Then, about a month later, they visited. They were acting cold and distant. Eventually, they disclosed the real reason for their visit. They had come to serve me with divorce papers. I was devastated. I realized they had been in touch with Jerry, but refused to share any details. They told me he wanted nothing to do with me anymore, and was sorry, but he couldn't waste his life with me any longer. It was clear to me that the only reason he left was because I had cancer, and he didn't want to take care of me anymore. While I could understand that it must have been tough on him, the least he could have done was have a conversation with me. After 3 years together and 1 year of marriage, that was the least we owed each other, an honest and transparent discussion about our feelings. But he didn't think he owed me even that, so he left without a word. After his parents served me the divorce papers, I signed them without drama. It was obvious there was nothing left to fight for, so it was better to let go in a dignified way. I obviously had a lawyer go over everything with a fine-tooth comb, but honestly, his terms were pretty fair. Besides, in 1 year of marriage, we didn't really have any joint assets, and neither of us wanted to drag things out. After getting through the waiting period, we finalized our divorce without even coming face to face with each other. Everything I needed to communicate to him was handled through my lawyer, who spoke to his parents and lawyer. Since this was an uncontested divorce, there was no need for us to meet either. That was it. After that, I didn't hear from my in-laws again. Even though I was completely shattered, I knew I had to keep going somehow. My condition had started worsening because of the heartbreak I had gone through. Even though my parents were trying to be strong for me, I could tell it was hard for them to see me like this. For their sake, I knew I couldn't give up on life, no matter how easy it might have felt back then. I decided to fight for my life. I don't know if it was a mental shift or if the treatment started working, but somehow I managed to pull through. I'm doing fine now, and for the past 3 months, I've been cancer-free. It wasn't easy at all. For the past 4 years, I've focused on being thankful for my life. Part of that gratitude meant being ready to give myself a second chance at love. That's why I agreed to let my ex-boyfriend move in with me 6 months ago. Here's some background information about me and my ex. We met in college and dated for 2 years, but parted ways shortly after graduation because we wanted different things in life. My ex, let's call him Andy, and I were part of a larger friend circle. That's actually how I met Jerry, as he was part of the same group. After graduation, we didn't exactly keep in touch. A couple of months after Andy and I broke up, Jerry reached out to me. We started talking, became friends, and within a few months, Jerry confessed that he'd always had feelings for me, even in college. He explained that he hadn't acted on them because I was with Andy. Now that I was single, he wanted to ask me out. After a couple of months, I finally said yes, and that's how Jerry and I ended up together. Even after our relationship became serious, Jerry seemed insecure about Andy. Though Andy and I had stayed friends after our breakup, I slowly phased him out of my life and eventually blocked him altogether because I knew Jerry felt uncomfortable with Andy. Our mutual friends told me Andy was very disappointed when I ghosted and blocked him after getting with Jerry. But at the time, Jerry was more important to me than anyone else because I was serious about him. Eventually, I married Jerry and forgot about Andy entirely. Then Jerry and I got divorced. Even though I never posted about it on social media or went public, I told a few friends. I guess that's how Andy found out about my divorce and cancer diagnosis. 5 months after my divorce was finalized, Andy reached out to me via email. He expressed his sympathy for everything I was going through, both the divorce and the cancer. He said he'd like to be friends again, but understood if I didn't feel comfortable. He was very sweet in that email and ended by saying he would always be there for me if I ever needed someone to talk to. At that time, I was still reeling from the shock of Jerry leaving me, so I didn't respond to the email for 10 months. I thought about it often and even considered replying, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. 10 months later, when I had finally made peace with Jerry's departure, I told a few friends about Andy's email. They encouraged me to at least talk to him in a friendly capacity. So that's what I did. I responded to Andy in a completely platonic way, just to clear the air between us, since he had obviously made an effort to reach out. That's how we started talking again, eventually reconnecting. We went back to being really good friends, and it was comforting to have someone to talk to regularly. Andy really understands me in a way no one else does. I did have my other friends, but with him, there had always been something special, and talking to him made me genuinely happy. Even my parents noticed the change in me and encouraged me to keep talking to him, even if we were just friends. For a few months, we only communicated online, but eventually, he started visiting me at home. Slowly but surely, we began getting closer again. Even though I wasn't ready to get back together or anything, Andy didn't give up on me. Last year, he finally told me that he had never really fallen out of love with me. He admitted that learning I had started dating Jerry had been a huge heartbreak for him, but knowing I was happy was enough for him to stay away. Now that Jerry was out of the picture and we were friends again, Andy felt compelled to tell me the truth. He still loved me. He made it clear that he didn't expect anything from me but just needed to get it off his chest. I appreciated his honesty, but I felt conflicted. It had been 3 years since my divorce, yet thoughts of Jerry and our past together still made me uneasy. We never really got closure, and that uncertainty left me feeling stuck. At the same time, I knew I really liked Andy. Honestly, I was pretty sure I loved him, maybe even more than I had before. My parents and friends reminded me that it had been 3 whole years since my divorce. If Jerry hadn't returned by now, it was clear he never truly cared about me, and never would. They encouraged me to stop living in the past and give myself a second chance, especially since I had fought so hard for my life and health. They were right. Having faced such a difficult journey, I knew I needed to value the present, because the future is never guaranteed. A couple of weeks after Andy's confession, I decided to give him a chance. After a few months of being back together, Andy told me he wanted to take care of me. He suggested moving in, and after giving it some thought, my parents and I agreed. Since Andy already spent most of his time at my house, it made sense for him to move in. Once he was settled into my routine, my parents decided to move out. They still visit me regularly, but now they have time for themselves, which I know they appreciate. I'm not ready for a second marriage just yet, but Andy and I have talked about it. Maybe someday we'll consider it, but for now, I'm just happy. I'm cancer-free, and I'm living with someone who truly loves me, and I love him too. Everything was perfect until earlier this week when Jerry reached out to me. He unblocked me everywhere and sent me a message on Facebook. He admitted he had treated me terribly and that I didn't deserve any of it. Jerry said it wasn't my fault I was diagnosed with cancer or that I wasn't responding well to treatment, but he had grown frustrated and done the cowardly thing. He left without even discussing it with me. He said he owed me closure and, more than anything, wanted to get back together. He confessed that he had missed me terribly over the past 4 years and was ready to give our marriage another chance. Jerry claimed he was prepared to take care of me for the rest of his life, if necessary, just to make things right. I decided to ask him to visit me, but not for the reasons he thought. My intentions were clear. I wanted to hurt him. I hadn't posted about my diagnosis or recovery anywhere. Only my family and close friends knew that I was cancer-free and doing well. Jerry had clearly assumed I was still struggling with my health, and after taking 4 years of time off, he decided it was the right moment to come back into my life. The audacity of it was infuriating. Did he truly believe I would just take him back after the way he had treated me? He'd spent the past 4 years pretending I didn't exist, and now he thought he could waltz back in, no questions asked? His message lacked any real explanation for his disappearance. He was so confident, almost arrogant, that I would be waiting for him. It enraged me. I decided I wasn't going to let him get away with it, so I came up with a plan to teach him a lesson. I invited him to my house, not because I wanted him back, but so I could show him how much my life had changed without him. Jerry had no idea I was living with Andy, because I don't publicize my relationships. In fact, I've always been private, only posting about Jerry when we got married. Very few people know about Andy, and none of them have stayed in touch with Jerry, so he was walking into the situation blind. A couple of days ago, Jerry showed up at my house with flowers and chocolates, looking confident and eager to reconcile. The moment I opened the door, I called Andy over and introduced him as the person I was sharing my life with. I calmly told Jerry that while I appreciated his apology, the flowers and the chocolates, I had moved on and didn't want him back in my life. That's when Jerry completely lost it. He started yelling and accusing me of betraying him. He even claimed I'd been cheating on him with Andy. It was ridiculous. How could I have cheated on him when I hadn't been with him for 4 years? But I didn't care about his reaction. I'd done what I set out to do, give him a reality check. While he was having a meltdown on my porch, I shut the door, and Andy and I went back to watching TV. For the record, I hadn't told Andy about my plan beforehand, but he didn't have a problem with what I did. However, my parents and friends weren't thrilled. They thought I should have just ignored Jerry's message instead of inviting unnecessary drama into my life. They understood why I felt the need to get back at him, but they also thought it was petty and unnecessary. Now, Jerry's parents won't stop contacting me. They accuse me of leading him on by inviting him over and claim I intentionally ruined his mental health. They insist that Jerry had been genuinely sorry and wanted to fix things, and I gave him false hope. They even had the nerve to accuse me of having an affair with Andy all along, despite knowing I had cut Andy out of my life entirely for Jerry's sake when we got married. It's absurd. For the past 4 years, my only focus was surviving cancer and getting better. Jerry's parents are painting him as the victim and me as the villain, conveniently ignoring the fact that he abandoned me during the most challenging time of my life. Not once did they apologize or acknowledge his behavior back then, yet they expect me to be the bigger person now. I won't lie, my parents and friends were right. What I did was petty, and I could have avoided all this drama if I just ignored Jerry. I feel guilty about creating a scene, but I still don't think I owe him an apology. His parents are blowing the situation out of proportion. Compared to what Jerry did to me, my actions were mild. He abandoned me while I was fighting for my life, went MIA for 4 years, and didn't even show up for our divorce proceedings. His parents never tried to make amends back then, so why should I be the one to forgive and forget now? I may feel a bit guilty about being petty, but I'm not sorry for standing up for myself. Update 1. Hi, so thank you so much for all the comments on my post. It was all really helpful. First things first, I did speak to my parents and my friends about why I did what I did. I don't deny the fact that I was petty, and I definitely don't deny the fact that it was completely unnecessary. I could have totally avoided all the drama by just not responding to him, but I felt like I needed to get some closure. I didn't think things through. I made the decision in the heat of the moment, so it was probably not the best way to deal with it, but I don't have any regrets about it either. They didn't have much to say. We just decided not to talk about it because it really wasn't worth it. It wasn't exactly as bad as you guys think. I guess I might not have been able to communicate properly in the post or something, but just to be clear, my parents and my friends were not insisting that I apologize to my ex or whatever. They had just told me that they didn't exactly agree with what I had done, and they left it at that. They hadn't tried to guilt-trip me like my in-laws were doing, and now that we have spoken about it, we have decided that we are just going to agree to disagree. It's really not a big deal for them, and nothing in our relationship has changed, so we are fine. The only problem that I'm dealing with right now is my in-laws, because they are very upset with what I did. They think that I have emotionally tortured their son by inviting him over, and they think that I owe him a huge apology. I'm not even joking. They have sent me several emails telling me that I need to apologize to him in person and that I need to clarify that I didn't have anything to do with Andy while we were together. Apparently, he is completely broken down. I don't understand why my in-laws expect so much of me, especially since we haven't had much of a relationship ever since the divorce. They knew that what their son was doing to me was incredibly wrong, and yet they had been on his side and helped him hide from me during the divorce. I'm not completely blaming them, but they were a huge part of the reason why I was never able to get any sort of emotional closure from Jerry while we were separating. So how come it was okay back then, but now, since it's Jerry's mental health at risk, all of a sudden I need to talk to him and give him an explanation for everything? He didn't think that he owed it to me back then, neither did his parents. So I'm just playing by the same rulebook now. Update 2. So, it's been 3 days since my last update, and I've been having no problems. But of course, that probably didn't sit well with Jerry and his parents. Andy and I work from home, but I guess they didn't know that. They probably assumed that Andy wouldn't be at home if they showed up in the morning. Jerry and his parents visited me this morning, and when I opened the door, they started demanding that I speak to Jerry and give him an explanation for everything that is going on, because he's been very confused, and they can't allow their son to go through this. I literally just rolled my eyes at them and told them that I was not entertaining any of this nonsense. I did not owe them anything, because Jerry didn't bother to give me an explanation when he left. Now he could think whatever he wanted. I was not going to give him the satisfaction of getting an explanation or a reaction out of me. The only reason I had even opened the door was so that I could say this to their faces. Then I told them that if they did not clear out, I would call the cops. Jerry started screaming at me, telling me that I was a horrible human being for what I had done. He called me petty and selfish, and then started cursing at me. When he started screaming, Andy heard it and came to my side. He looked furious, and I could tell that it was taking him all he had to keep himself from going at Jerry, and I really didn't want him to do that. So, I took my phone out and told Jerry and his parents that they had to leave, or I really would call the cops. After bickering with me for a couple of seconds, they finally left, because I had started dialing, even though they did not let go of the opportunity to curse at me some more. That did not affect me, though, even though it really made Andy mad, and he cursed right back at them. Finally, they left. Luckily, Andy told me that he had started recording everything on his phone. So even though there is hardly any video of this happening, he has a full audio recording of Jerry yelling at me. He didn't stop recording until they had left. Now that we have this, we know for a fact that the next time they show up, we will not only be pressing charges against them, but we will also be contacting our lawyers to file a restraining order against Jerry and his family. I really hope that we don't have to go through all of that, and that they leave me alone after this, because I think I've said everything I had to. Update 3. Hey, so it's been a couple of days since Jerry and his parents showed up at my house. After that, they did not try to contact me anymore, and I was really relieved. I did speak to a couple of my friends about what had happened, and they told me that what I had done was kind of petty and unnecessary. However, the way Jerry and his parents were reacting right now was unhinged, and they thought it would be wise for me to speak to a lawyer just in case. But I don't think I'm going to need to do that because last night I received an email from Jerry. He told me that he's moving to Europe with his parents and that he's never going to bother me again. Apparently, after he left me, he moved to California for his new job. He had applied to it while he was still with me, but couldn't bring himself to talk to me about it. He knew that it was impossible for me to relocate at a time like that, and he didn't even want me to consider it. However, he said he would have felt like a horrible human being for leaving me while I was struggling to live, so he admitted to being a coward. He said that he left to avoid any sort of confrontation. Even though he had a couple of flings in the past 4 years, he could never get serious with anybody because he always regretted whatever had gone wrong with me. Recently, he applied for a position in Europe and had been back here for a couple of months to convince his parents to move with him and have a fresh start. That's why he reached out to me as well, because now that he was back in town, he had at least wanted to apologize to me and give our relationship another shot. But after seeing me with Andy the other day, he realized that he had no right to intrude in our lives, especially not after everything that he had put me through. He admitted that he definitely did not have the right to question me, nor did his parents. So now he said he is doing the decent thing and leaving me alone. He said that he does not expect to be forgiven because all of this is coming too late and is just too little, but he wanted to apologize for everything that he had done. He admitted that he had been a coward and had no right to be throwing tantrums and sending his parents after me the way he did. He also acknowledged that Andy loves me and that I'm happy with him, so he is going to stay away from me now. I have to say, I'm really glad that he came to this conclusion. I did not reply to that email, but I did make Andy read it, and my friends and parents read it as well. They think that this is good enough to put an end to whatever had been going on, and I agree. Now we can all finally collectively move on from this. This is good, because in a couple of months, I think I would like to get married to Andy and start a new chapter of my life with him. I guess I finally got the closure that I needed, and I'm finally ready to get married again, start a family, and just live my life to the fullest once more.